Hey guys, Aaron Miles here with On Tilt Gaming, winner of GP Montreal. Going to be giving you the quick rundown of the Pricia list that the On Tilt Gaming guys played this weekend. Obviously it's still a Pricia list, but it does differ quite a bit from the standard Pricia lists that we saw at Atlantic City, California, and even the rest of Montreal, and the ones that we saw over in France this weekend. So I'm going to be going through like a card by card rundown with you guys, kind of explaining to you how this deck works, why it's still a Pricia deck, what it does differently, how the matchups kind of go, all that good stuff. So first off, it is a Pricia deck, so you do run Sacred Elf, Levitine, and your Pumper Gallia. You really want 4 Elf and 4 Levitine, no matter what kind of Pricia deck you're running, because that just kind of enables you to go, oops, I win on turn 2. Same thing with Death Scythe and Horn, you need Pumping or Gallia. We only wanted to run 2 Death Scythe, we didn't think it was super pertinent that we run 3. And then we ran the Horns because, as you'll see later on, we can kind of cycle through our stone deck going to the grave. We want to be able to shuffle that back in, as well as if you draw a Giant, you want to be able to discard it to Guinevere and get it back into your deck. So we only felt we needed 2 Death Scythe because the turn 2 OTK doesn't happen all that often. So you don't really need a Death Scythe all that often. We might go up to 3 going forward, just for the consistency of it, but cycling through them with Guinevere was never a thing. Like, you don't really discard Scythe to Gwen, exile 3 cards and get it back. Your Gwen's usually sacking herself, so 3 Death Scythe is more of a feat-sing thing in my mind. And then we ran the 2 Horns to kind of mitigate the fact that we were only running 2 Death Scythes, so we needed more Pumper Gallias. So for those of you that are currently still unaware somehow, if you open Sacred Elf, Levitine, and a Pumper Gallia, then you can win on turn 2 by playing the Sacred Elf. On turn 1, playing your 2 Regalia. Turn 2, you tap Levitine, and your Pumper Gallia before untaps. Move to untaps, tap them again, so Pricia is now an 18-18 effectively, or an 18-14. You Judgment, you sack the Elf to Levitine, giving you a plus 1,000. You cycle your stone, you attack with Pricia, you cycle your stone, you God's Art. Now she's attacking for 2,000 in the air and is untapped. You attack again, it's 2,000. So your opponent only has 4,000 life. That wins the game, which I'm not sure if all of my opponents knew, because sometimes I would do that to someone and they would kind of look at it, they'd be like, yeah, and I'm like, that's 4,000 damage. You lose. We can pick up our cards now. But that's just something you really want to be doing in every Pricia list, no matter what your other cards are. You want to be running this combo because there's absolutely no reason not to. It'll just win you the game. I think I won, like 8 games this weekend off of the turn 2 OTK. My round 1 I was done in 4 minutes, and I didn't want to stand up because I didn't want everyone in the room to know I was playing Pricia, and I'm just like, holy crap, I just opened Elf 2 Regalia both games. It's insane. So yeah, that's just kind of the standard Pricia engine, what you want to be doing no matter what you're doing. It's going on to what we were doing. No, this is still just red cards. So Guinevere, Ruck Egg, Earther. 4 of on the Guineveres and the Ruck Egg, and then 1 of Earther. So Ruck Egg actually really underperformed this weekend. I ended up siding it out a lot. It just doesn't matter as much in the mirror because everything flies over it when they actually go to kill you. Even if you're playing against the aggro version of the deck, they tend to give their resonators flying. Guinevere obviously still very good. Earther was very good because we were running the Skyscraper Giant. It's very easy for Earther to deal a mass amount of damage, and one of the ways that you win the Pricia mirror is you flip before they do. Just to threaten lethal. If you both have Death Scythe, like, you flip your Pricia and then they're like, oh, I can't kill it, and I get to go, oh, Guinevere, discard Skyscraper Giant, because I'm always drawing my Giants, you know. That's just the nature of the beast. And then you just Earther it. And that ended up happening a lot. Earther was a huge MVP this weekend, probably going to go in on a few more of those, but even then, this is still pretty standard stuff. This is what pretty much every Pricia list is doing. I would be very surprised if the Myths list didn't run Earthers as well. I don't think the aggro list would, but I'd be very surprised if the Myth list didn't. It's going on to the actual good stuff. We have 4 Jack climbing the Beanstalk, 2 Skyscraper Giant, and 1 Hydromonica. So when Jack deals damage to your opponent, you get to sack him off, get a Skyscraper Giant. That actually didn't come up for me this entire weekend until the finals, but in testing, it was very, very good. And that's really just because I played so many Pricia mirrors. This isn't really in there for the Pricia mirror, this is in there for the other matchups. It's very hard for Control to deal with a 17-17 with barrier from Chance. And it's pretty easy for Jack to get in, especially if he comes out on turn 2 before you call a stone. You go, because you always want to go second with this build. So ideally, if you're playing against Control, you go turn 1 Sacred Elf. They don't kill it. You live in the perfect world. And then you get to go tap Elf, tap your stone, and energize into Jack, call a stone, give Jack swiftness and potentially flying, attack with Jack, get your Giant. All of a sudden, like, a turn 2 Barrier Chant 1717 is pretty much impossible for Control to deal with. They need some kind of board wipe or Soul Hunt, but for the most part, a lot of the Control decks have stopped running Soul Hunt because of, 1, the popularity of Featsing, 2, they really can't afford to lose their own card advantage like that, all that good stuff. And then the one Hydromonica was in case you wanted to put the Giant on top of your deck and then use Pricia's other ability to cycle a Resonator and just cheat the Giant in. Never ended up coming up for me. I know Ryan Heavenly Gusted Hydromonica Day Heavenly Gust at some point during the tournament, but I never actually got to use the Hydromonica. I ended up siding it out a lot because I was playing Pricia Mirrors and I figured the Hydro into Giant was much less relevant in those matchups. But that's one of the big things that set our deck apart. The Giant really comes in handy in the Featsing matchup and the Fox matchup, just anything that wants to set up a board. So Giant's just pretty much an all-around good matchup card, except for Pricia, but if you watch the finals, you can see it's a good card there too. So moving on, this is actually my favorite part of the deck, is the 3 Fiery Fox Reincarnation and the 3 Maribel the Machine Hearted. So Fiery Fox is a card that everybody kind of looked over. It's just banish a stone, put the top card of your Magic Stone deck into your field. So 1, this not only accelerates your mana, this guy's a pseudo mana dork, and Mariabella is a card that does a lot of things that you should probably just go read it. It's a pain to explain it all, but so we played the 2 Firestones because Mariabella always wants to grab a Firestone so that she can have haste. Because of how Pricia works, you get the stone, you just give your Mariabella haste, it's all good. And the Fiery Fox also allows you to cycle through your stones faster to get more counters on Mariabella, and the more counters Mariabella has, the more impactful she is on the game. And blast counters are more relevant 9 times out of 10. Sure, brace counters are good against control, but against like Featsing, Fox, and the Pricia Mirror, which is most of the meta at the moment, you really want the blast counters more. So Fiery Fox has a lot of tricks. If you watch the finals, you'll see where I cycle through a stone to give my Resonator flying on my opponent's turn to block their Pricia. As well as just, your opponent might not think about it. I think in top 8, I only had 1 stone open, so my opponent throws down his Spinning Mitts, and then I'm just like, okay, cycle a stone, play Keen Sense, because the stone comes in untapped. But yeah, the Resonance triggers, the stone coming in on top, the Fiery Fox was just absolutely amazing this weekend. I can't stress enough how good this card is. Probably your best turn 1 play if you're going second is Energize into Sacred Elf, tap a stone, give it haste, tap them both for Fiery Fox. That means you've suddenly got 4 mana going into turn 2, and that means that you can play Jack and get him haste on turn 2. Sorry, and then Mariabella just will single-handedly win you games. She does so many things. She killed so many J rulers. Once Mariabella comes out and gets 2 counters, your opponent can't flip their Pricia because you're just going to shoot it. Sure, they can get a Pump Regalia, but if you've got like 2 counters and a Fox, maybe they don't think about it. They flip, they tap their Pump Regalia, and you go, oh, cycle through a stone. Mariabella suddenly has an extra counter, shoot 3 times. So just absolutely phenomenal cards this weekend. I think 3 ofs are perfect for them. I don't think I'd go up to 4 on either. Fiery Fox is a little bit worse when you're going first. But overall, these cards overperformed extremely well for me this weekend. I'd highly recommend putting Mariabella in every single Pricia deck. Fiery Fox, maybe you don't have to, but Mariabella definitely. I think Fiery Fox is a little more combo-y, kind of for that Jack package. Then the spells of the deck, 3 Gale Force, 1 Heavenly Gust, 2 Windscluded. Gale Force was really a meta call here. I had been sold on Featsing up until the night before the tournament, so that's what we had mostly been testing this against, because I felt like Featsing was Pricia's worst matchup. It's really hard to get through a Gwyber. You really can't attack with any of your smaller Resonators. Your Pricia could die if it gets blocked by a 12/12 flyer if you don't have Death Scythe already on field. And so we put in the Gale Forces to make sure that Jack could get through, to make sure Pricia could get through. And Gale Force was a phenomenal card for me this weekend, probably because I played 7 Pricia Mirrors. But overall, Gale Force, very strong meta call. I'm not sure how relevant it's going to be going forward. I also assumed that a lot of the Alhamat decks would be playing Angels, or at least Blazer, so Gale Force really doesn't have any dead matchups right now. So I think it's actually a fine card to main deck. 3 might have been a little overambitious, but we did want to see it. Heavenly Gust, obviously, to get rid of Death Scythes and Levitines and all that. Just wipe out your opponent's Regalia. 2 Windsecludeds. Make sure that Pricia doesn't die to Moonbeam. Make sure your Resonators aren't randomly getting picked off by other things. Windscluded is just all around a good card. I think 2 of was definitely correct to main. I think these numbers in general were pretty good. You might want to go up on a Heavenly Gust if you're having a bit of problems seeing it, but I know that I didn't really have a whole lot of problems playing around Death Scythe. But overall, strong spell lineup, and that's actually all the spells in the deck. which I like. I don't like having a high spell count in decks like this. I like to be more combo-y with my resonators and all that. So we're going to get into the stones. Another thing a lot of people were asking us about was the 2 Firestones. So first off, we're always picking to go second, which means we can play Sacred Elf turn 1 no matter what stone we hit. And a lot of our opponents were picking to go first, so we got to go second anyway. So pretty much the entire day I'm going second, which means I will never miss a Sacred Elf turn 1, irregardless of what my stone deck looks like. We didn't play a greenstone because we didn't ever want to whiff on swiftness, because it's very important that 1, your Sacred Elf gets swiftness if you energize into it turn 1, and 2, it's very important that your Jack gets swiftness if you play it turn 2. That and Mariabella never really wanted to grab a Windstone. We always wanted a Firestone, so if you ripped 1 Firestone, we didn't want our Mariabellas to be dead. So the 2 Firestones just makes so much more sense when you kind of look at it like that. The only time you will actually get screwed on that is if you're trying to block a Flying Resonator with Fiery Fox on your opponent's turn, it's possible that you just hit the redstone and only get swiftness. If that had happened in the finals, I would have lost game 1. But you only play 2 of them, so it's not a huge risk. And it's much more consistent to just always get that swiftness out. You never want to whiff on the swiftness. You can afford to whiff on flying. And then, the 4 reincarnation and the 4 blasting waves are standard. However, our reincarnations ended up putting in a lot more work than our opponent's reincarnations because we run the Fiery Fox. I know sometimes, I just wanted to sack off my basics with the Fiery Fox to kind of get him on the field, fix my mana a little bit, because I had so many double green cards in my hand. But for the most part, you want to be sacking off Memory of Reincarnation so that you can draw a card when you cycle through a stone. And having a mana dork that says tap, produce either of the 2 colors that your deck plays and draw a card, which is essentially what Fiery Fox is if you're sacking a reincarnation, is just really, really good. This deck is very difficult to run out of cards. It has so many threats in the deck, is so consistent on the mana base and what it wants to be doing. I just think a lot of the deck came together very nicely, especially for me. And it, in particular in the matchups I played, I didn't get to play against any controls, so when we get to the sideboard, you'll notice that most of it didn't come in. It was 2 Frigg, God of Abundant Harvest. The text is on the screen, you can read it. If you don't know what these cards do, the text is there, so you can look it up. I'm assuming most of you know. Frigg is a little hard to see, I understand. So I'm not going to really go over what all of these went in against, because it is, kind of a meta call when you build your side deck. But I did want to talk about some of the things that I did with the sideboard, because I did play 7 Pricia Mirrors, and if you're going to play Pricia at an event, you are going to play a number of Pricia Mirrors. So let me tell you what I did for those. In Pricia Mirrors, I put in the Earther, the 2 Death Scythes, and the Maribel, and I would usually take out 2 Ruck Eggs, a Hydromonica, and a Wind Secluded, because Ruck Egg just isn't very good in the Pricia Mirror. As I was saying earlier, it's pretty easy to fly over. Death Scythes obviously you want more of. Maribel obviously you want more of, you want one of so that you can destroy your opponent's Leviatine when they go to swing. I don't actually put in the additional Heavenly Gust because I'm not as worried about Death Scythe. And Pricia tends to only run 7 to 9 Regalia, so the mass wipe isn't as important. Their Wind Secludeds don't do a whole lot in the matchup, so I'm not really worried about getting those in with my Gust. So that didn't really come in. And then Earther is because, as I was saying, most of you may not understand what I mean when I say whoever flips Pricia first wins. So let's say you both open Elf to Regalia. So you play it, your opponent has a Death Sight, so whatever. So on your turn 2, if you go first, you just have Elf, your Stone, and your 2 Regalia. Just flip your Pricia. If they are not playing Divine Bird or Fiery Fox of Reincarnation, they will lose the next turn. It's very, very, very difficult for a deck like this to actually kill your Pricia the next turn, and you don't need swiftness. Next turn, you pass to them, they have almost no way to kill your Pricia, they pass back to you, and then you're like, oh, suddenly I have a 2000 flyer that can attack twice. It's very simple, just Earther kind of manages that. Because you're playing Skyscraper Giant, and pretty much only because you're playing Skyscraper Giant, you can get away with Earthering the Pricia on turn 3. It'll actually work out for you because it'll deal 1400 damage, which lives through a double Death Scythe pump, if they have out 2 of them. But overall, I want to go up to 2 Earther in the main deck. I don't know if I mentioned that anywhere yet, but I think he was a very solid card, especially for the Pricia mirror. He was good against Gwyber, he was good against Fox, he's not bad against Control, because worst case scenario, he's an 8-8 vanilla that you call a stone and suddenly he has swiftness. So overall, I was very impressed by how Earther performed this weekend. The Maribel also did very well. Death Sights, obviously, it's a Death Scythe. The rest of my side didn't really come in all that often. Keen Sense came in against Spinning Myth Pricia, and that worked out really well for me. But other than that, sideboard didn't get used too often because I was playing so many of the same matchups. So that's all from me today. This is Aaron Miles for On Tilt Gaming. This is the deck list we came up with at one GP Montreal. Going forward into Texas, I'm not sure you're actually going to see too much of this list. I think people are more interested in the Spinning Myth deck list, which I personally think is a little inconsistent. One of my opponents in top 8 that did play it, I think he was second seed, he just ended up kind of bricking both games, which is a very real possibility for the deck. You do play a lot of dead cards. So personally, I'd recommend this list. It's a little bit harder to play because of all the interactions with Fiery Fox and Mariabella that people may not be used to, as well as just trying to find ways to get things through, figuring out what's the right time to play Jack. So if you plan on taking this deck to Dallas, I would recommend you start playtesting immediately. Just to kind of get a feel for it. This isn't really something you want to pick up and play. It's something you want to get a few matches in with before you really get into it. And remember to always go second. Driz ended up losing in top 4 because he lost game 1 while his opponent went first, and he was like, oh, maybe I should go first. Don't go first, go second. This is the first time in Force of Will that I'll recommend you go second. Even when the Energized mechanic came out, I was still going first. Last set I was going first. Even with World Pricia, I was going first, but here, you want to go second. So that's all from me. This has been Aaron Miles from On Tilt Gaming. See you next time.